Well, in a post-pandemic world, office occupancy hovers just under 50%. That's according to a report out from Castle. Now, many workers still opting for hybrid or full-time work from home. But what if work was your home or extremely close to it? Enter Elon Musk. The Tesla CEO has purchased land near Tesla facilities outside Austin, Texas, where he reportedly plans to build a community for employees dubbed Snailbrook. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report. Now, Snailbrook isn't Musk's first foray into a corporate community. In 2021, Musk encouraged employees to move near SpaceX Starship facility in Texas. The concept of a company town is not new and was popular practice in the turn of the century for mining and railroad companies. But in an age where less folks are traveling to the office, could companies like Tesla incentivize workers with affordable and nearby housing? Shimon, Shkury, founder and president of Ariel Property Advisors, joins us now with a deeper dive into what this could mean for the future of work. Great to have you on the show here. So this is a curious proposition here, something, I know we've seen it with companies like Foxconn sort of building these communities, having people closer. How do you see this working, though, in this day and age?
First of all, thanks for having me. I think that we always have to look at the bigger picture of why this is happening. And one of the things that we learned about is statistically by 2035, the United States will be short 4.3 million housing units based on the National Multifamily Council. And I think that's a really important statistic to understand. We are in a housing crisis. The second statistic is from my hometown, which is New York City. The Real Estate Board of New York is telling us that we'll be missing 560,000 units in 2030. And when it comes to that, there are two elements that policymakers, public officials can help with. One is they focus on regulation, which is important for low-income housing, but they focus less, unfortunately, in many cases, on the incentives to build more housing, which is the supply side of the equation, which is super important. So you're mentioning the Elon Musk situation where he said that he left California because of overtaxation and overregulation, and that's part of what's happening. I think he's looking for solutions that are beyond what the public officials have been presenting. And I can give you some examples or some successful examples of what has happened in New York City over the past few years that was successful and what's happening now that's a little less successful.
Yeah, let's get to some of those examples because, so that way we can get to the reality of what's been working and what hasn't been working so far.
Perfect. So between 2010 and 2020, New York City added 117,000 residential rental units. That's 68% of the total construction that took place in the residential world. And most of it was because there was a 421A or Affordable New York tax abatement. So residential developers had the incentive to develop residential rentals with a component of affordability. However, that program stopped in June of 2022. And you see that the first quarter of this year has only 9,000 plus scheduled permits. And that's about half of what it was the quarter before. And I'll tell you that that's going to decline because of these misalignment in incentives. And incentives, by the way, are sometimes something that the cities can do that doesn't cost them much. The first incentive is zoning. When you provide the zoning to or allow more density, you're really essentially allowing the building to be built or a bigger building to be built within the same location. The second thing is the tax incentive that I just described, the property tax incentive. You have a vacant lot today, it doesn't produce tax revenue. If you build a building, if you incentivize the developer to build a residential rental building, it's adding housing, and it's adding jobs. And in the future, while that tax abatement phases out, you can benefit from taxes as well.
But Shimon, what about tying your fate, essentially, not just now your job if you take on a job here, but also literally the roof over your head? If you get laid off and you've already tied your fate and your housing to a company, I mean, surely that's not something a lot of people are comfortable with.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a social question that we have to ask ourselves. And, if you live in a community that provides you with housing and with your job and you have to move away, that could be an issue. But it's not really different than living in any city, right, and being laid off and having to pay the rent in a way. So all of these items needs to be taken into consideration, and that's when regulation comes to place. In case of low income housing or low income needs, we definitely as a society have to take care of that. But it's the supply side of the equation is the one item that we all have to focus on moving forward to mitigate that housing crisis. And that's part of what I think that our elected official should think about. It does need political courage. I want to say one more thing about our elected officials, because I got to give credit to the mayor of New York City and to the governor. They have been discussing the supply of housing and the incentives of supply of housing here in New York City in the biggest possible way. I really hope it trickles down to the rest of the elected officials. We have great leadership. Let's make sure that we build more housing here.
So for some, perhaps, private companies who want to sort of take things into their own hands when it comes to affordability, I mean, even Mr. Beast, a.k.a. Jimmy Donaldson, known for his philanthropy, bought a neighborhood, in Greenville, North Carolina, where he grew up, for his family and for some of his employees, to be able to commute closer to work. Some backlash, a lot of people a little bit uncomfortable with that. But what do you think about the role of some of these private sort of corporate communities being involved as they do wait for more affordability from lawmakers and for prices to come down?
Yeah, I can give you examples from the commercial world, actually, here in New York City. One of the things we've seen in office that Google is building their own campus, for example, here in New York City. So private companies are doing that. JP Morgan is building their own offices here. So private companies are investing in real estate for the benefit of their employees on a commercial level. When it comes to the residential level, I think that that larger companies are sometimes taking or trying to help communities. We've seen that with Amazon. We've seen that with Google. They're not acting directly, investing in their employees' housing. They're investing in their communities. And I think that makes a lot more sense because, again, you're living in a certain community, you're working in a certain community, and as a corporation, as corporate America, you are investing in affordable housing in these specific communities, which I think makes a lot of sense, and the right social elements to it as well. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. I prefer that approach to sort of, living in, Snailbrook and wondering if I call in sick or someone come knocking on my window, like, we have the bus coming for you to come and get you to work. A big thank you to Shimon Shkury, founder and president of Ariel Property Advisors. Thank you so much.